Hello, my name is Dr. Melissa Gatter. I'm a lecturer in anthropology and international development at the University of Sussex. And this poster is called Time in the Camp, Examining the Politics of Aid and Power Through Ethnography in Azraq Refugee Camp. This poster presents the key ideas of ethnographic research that I conducted in Azraq Refugee Camp from 2017 to 2018 and published in my new book, which just came out in March of 2023, called Time and Power in Azraq Refugee Camp, a 9-to-5 Emergency, published with American University in Cairo Press. I want to begin with a quote by the scholar and poet Yusuf Qasmiyeh, from a poem called The Camp is Time. And the quote is very short and sweet. It's, "The camp is time and time is the camp." When I spoke with a resident of Azraq camp about time being the subject of my research there, she responded, "There is no time in the camp." She did not mean that the camp was devoid of time altogether, but rather that her experience of life in the camp made her feel that she did not have time to break from her daily routine of working at a kindergarten in the camp, taking care of her children, and also maintaining her caravan shelter. However, at the same time, many residents shared with me feelings of extreme boredom from the abundance of time in Azraq camp, where they lived for 3 or 4 years by that time. So temporal experiences in Azraq are not clear-cut for its residents, nor for the aid workers employed by the 20-plus international aid agencies operating in the camp. So following from Qasmiyeh's quote, and through this research, I'm trying to call for anthropologists and social scientists to more seriously engage with the temporal politics of displacement. Studies of refugee camp spaces more often foreground the study of space, leaving time to the background, viewing the camp then as a paradox of permanent temporariness. But my research argues that time in the refugee camp is messy, contradictory, and confusing, featuring diverging and intersecting tempos, paces, and timelines. So I engage with key anthropological debates on time and temporal power, on everyday aid interactions, and on refugee camps themselves to propose that foregrounding temporal politics and displacement reveals the invisible power dynamics of aid that are otherwise overlooked. So just a bit about Azraq camp itself, as you see with the map in the middle of the poster, and some photos that I've included of the caravans and caravan artwork around it. So Azraq Refugee Camp in Jordan opened in the desert to the east of Amman, about an hour-and-a-half drive, in 2014. It hosts around 40,000 Syrian refugees in 4 villages across 15 square kilometers. While security is provided by the Jordanian military, the day-to-day operations of the camp are mostly managed by the UNHCR, or the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and around 20 other UN organizations and international non-governmental organizations, or NGOs. I spent a year in Azraq working for 2 different NGOs while conducting ethnographic fieldwork, which included both participant and non-participant observation, as well as interviews with both residents and aid workers. So the aid workers in the camp are mostly early career Jordanian humanitarians who are tasked with carrying out the programs and services designed by those in decision-making roles at national offices in Amman and also headquarter offices in the West. These national aid workers are the face of Azraq's central referral system. This referral system comprises of 1 community center in each village for residents to approach with any issues they might face in the camp, from caravan repair to issues with income generation, for example. And once a case is opened at the community center, an aid worker then must refer the case to the responsible NGO in the camp. This is narrated as an efficient system, but the referral system in reality is quite slow and bureaucratic. So residents often wait for weeks or more to be referred. NGOs receiving those referrals often deflect responsibility back to the community centers, and aid workers regularly instruct residents to come back tomorrow, bring different paperwork, or just keep waiting. So the proceduralism of the system really surprised me, as I did not expect a temporary camp system to be weighed down by such clunky, wooden, bureaucratic furniture, nor to function as a bureaucracy in itself. So I describe this procedural response to the urgency of residents' basic needs as a 9-to-5 emergency, to capture how the aid system structurally undermines the expected timelines of quick aid response. So the implication of this camp bureaucracy on residents' experiences adds multiple layers of waiting. I argue that residents are waiting for various things simultaneously. So they're waiting out displacement, they're waiting to return to Syria, while also waiting for aid in the camp. And this bureaucratically imposed wait for aid in Azraq is, in a sense, the most pressing form of waiting, as it keeps residents too busy in their daily lives to question the system or to speak openly about other ways of being in displacement. So I observed this in the slouched shoulders of residents waiting for hours to be referred at the community centers, and also in the rush and the mundane boredom of residents' daily routines. This idea of having too much time and also having no time. So while residents are made to wait for aid and for the opportunity to return, the aid system, through development programming and everyday interactions with residents telling them to come back tomorrow, for example, this encourages residents to remain unsettled in the meantime. NGO programs socialize residents to hope for a single type of future, the return to Syria, while reinforcing a futureless present produced by bureaucratic proceduralism that continuously defers accountability to some future time and place. This has resulted in residents' loss of belief in the system itself and also the future return. And many told me that actually there is no future. They didn't feel that there was a future for them. So analyzing how the aid system manages time within Azraq's borders has shown how the bureaucratic system of the camp actually forecloses the futures of its residents that it is meant to preserve. However, residents did open up to me about different timelines coexisting with the futureless present of humanitarianism. And these timelines were imagined as alternative presents and near futures, with the far future preserved for the return to Syria. So in other words, there were other ways of being in displacement, of imagining otherwise. One resident shared that she imagines living in another city in Jordan where her brother lived, being able to have normal things like a house and a job while she awaits the return. Another resident shared that she imagines returning to a safe area in Syria until she is able to return to her home city. And these imaginings demonstrate how residents manage to resist internalizing that narrative that their only possibility is to live out displacement in Azraq, as they are every day. So residents are able to negotiate with this temporal power of the camp's aid regime to create, or at least imagine, alternative presents and imagine more ordinary near futures. And these ordinary near futures are, as we can see by the resident hoping to just have a normal house and a job, these are less grand futures in which residents are still displaced but might be able to feel less like a refugee. And they're certainly liberated from the spatial-temporal confines of camp life. So this has been just a brief overview of the key ideas presented in my book. Ethnography enables anthropologists to call the unseen into question, as I have aimed to show how ethnography can reveal less visible forms of power in places like refugee camps, where time is as much an oppressor as space. And when we more seriously engage with time in our studies of displacement, we can begin to produce a clearer map of power in the refugee camp, how it is enforced, and also how it's negotiated. So we come to understand then that the camp is more than some ongoing, endless present. It is also part of residents' pasts and futures, as I'm trying to illustrate in this very abstract timeline that I have at the top of the poster. So the camp experience is multidimensional and it's very political. And the spatiotemporal lens can shape our understandings and framings of other such spaces of precarity. Thank you.